Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
Your craft is about you continuously learning and sharing with others. So don't focus on the awards or the accolades. Instead, focus on telling and sharing your stories, your films, and projects through your passion, your imagination, creativity, and lens. That is where the rewards are.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. Right now, a real seismic shift is happening in the film industry. This is your best chance to join a new filmmaking movement. You have been called to create an everlasting impact with your unmatched, deep desire to tell authentic stories. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets Podcast, episode number 53. And I am so excited to introduce my guest, Frank Fazzio. All right. So Frank, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and reveal the one filmmaker secret that you've been keeping from us.
Well, what's up, filmmakers everywhere? Well, for me, I thought about that, and I guess the secret for me was because I've been doing this. I have been honing my craft for quite some time, and I've done a lot of different genres of filmmaking. But what I learned was my secret to me would be I learned through all that was don't be judgmental, and there's no room for egos. Your craft is about you continuously learning and sharing with others. So don't focus on the awards or the accolades. Instead, focus on telling and sharing your stories, your films, and projects through your passion, your imagination, creativity, and lens. That is where the rewards are. And that's what it's been for me.
That's amazing. That's a great sentiment. Great sort of, perspective really of the way of looking at it, because we're all chasing after something, right? We're always looking to get the next success, get the next accolade, like you say, and it gives us that sort of initial high, but then we're always looking for the next thing. What can I do to level up, to get better, to tell another story that I feel strongly about? Frank, take me back, way back to that moment where you had that initial spark, where you felt like that is the turning point of where, you get bit by the bug of filmmaking and you truly understand that this is what you want to do. Tell me that story.
Well, that probably goes back about, I would say about 10 years ago, maybe, where really 10 to 15, I'd say 15 years ago. I was working on me and a friend of mine, Steve James, who was, we were working on a sci-fi web series. We were going to do 10 episodes. We ended up doing 5. And when I got into that, it was a whole different animal for me, because it was a lot of, we were doing a lot of green screen. We were doing a lot of action, stuff like that. But then I decided, when we took that break after about 5 episodes, I said to Steve, I've written a real touching, heartwarming drama that I want to do. And he said, that would be so good. I would love to do that. And so we did that film, and I got so many responses from people that said, I've seen your work before, but this has just touched my heart in a way that I couldn't imagine. It's a gift that you've given to me, and don't stop doing what you're doing. And that was it for me, because the other stuff was fun, and it was a lot of adrenaline, and it was a lot of. In fact, my wife laughed in our first season when we did our sci-fi. She said, it looks like a video game, and I said, well, I think that's a compliment, actually. But anyway, when I stepped away from that, I started spreading my wings, because it's sort of like, musicians or anybody who say, I've been we were working together for about 4 years on this stuff all the time. And we weren't really doing anything else, because our time was so spent on trying to make these episodes work that we really didn't have time to kind of step outside of that box. And when we had that opportunity, not only did I do some amazing things, Steve did some amazing new things. And that was, for me, I guess, kind of that moment. I felt that connection from that response I got from so many people. And I won a couple awards. And that was my first film I ever had won a couple awards for. And I didn't really think it was that worthy of it, but it was just that moment that touched me was more the connection with the people, and the response to keep doing what you're doing, Frank, because you're doing a good job. So
there you go. If there wasn't, that's a perfect affirmation in a way. And, when you mentioned, the touching of the heart, I literally got chills on my arms, because that is a unique sort of feeling to, I think, us as filmmakers, is striving to connect with humanity, with that human condition, and really understanding what it is about us as humans that makes us tick. I like to ask these questions of filmmakers every now and then. What is it about filmmaking that, it's such a crazy endeavor, and the industry itself, especially in, independent space? What is it about independent filmmakers or filmmakers in general that just makes them crazy to tell stories, to work long hours, to constantly be told no, to be rejected left and right, but we still strive forward? What is that?
Yeah, you know what it is? I think it's sort of like any craft or any skill or whether it's sports or music or arts. You either get bitten by that bug somewhere along the line, or you don't. And when you do, what matters more than anything to you is, I want to make films. I want to make films, and so what that means is I really just will pretty much go after it, and don't wait for it to come to you. You have to go after it. And that was a good lesson that I learned in some of this stuff. Because, when we were shooting these sci-fi films, we were looking for abandoned buildings. And of course we weren't supposed to be on the property. But what we said was, let's take our cameras, let's take it in there, let's do it. And if we get caught, we'll say, whoops, I'm sorry. We should have our mistake. Let's get out of here. But, I guess the thing is, we just felt the need and the passion and the desire. And I think what happens too for me was, what I find is, and I'm sure this happens with many filmmakers, if you can connect with a cast or a crew or just an individual that is like-minded, you don't feel alone on this thing. Just like my friend, he would call me up at 3 a.m. and said, man, I just had this idea. And I don't know, it's just crazy, but I want to run it by you. And I said, run it by me, and you find those connections. And that was really helpful for me, because what I learned is that if you're willing, if you find that tribe, and that tribe is really meaning there's a connection there that's deeper than just going, I want to make it in the film business. I want to be noticed. I want to be, I got to make a lot of money. Instead of, you want to say, I want to make a good film. I want to make people see it and really look at it, or look at it and really see it. I want them to listen to it, but really hear it. So it's kind of that, it's just, it's embodied in you, or at least for me. And that's what I feel like is kept me going, because it, every time I think, well, maybe this time to take a break. A seed is planted. And once that seed's planted, and that's how it happened with my documentaries. There was a seed planted that I had not even anticipated. And it was because of the COVID. There was a silver lining for me that I couldn't have imagined, that planted a seed that took me to a film, which was a documentary that ended up winning 25 awards worldwide. And it was the farthest thing from my mind. It was that seed was planted, and I said, I got to do this. And it's meaningful. And that's the other thing for me. I do a lot of films. I've done comedy, drama, TV, but some of these films that I've been doing recently, they're meaningful to me. They connect to me more than just at the superficial level, or they go deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So take me there. I see some of the accolades, some of the awards behind you there on the walls. Pretty great. Take me to that project, to the inception of it. How, what was the thought behind creating that film and having the success with it?
Yeah. So what happened was I was doing most of my film work in Virginia before I moved to Colorado. And I only been in Colorado about 3 years. Well, when I moved here, of course, I was still kind of going, okay, I'm just trying to re-network and, get out there and find out what people are doing. And then COVID hit. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah. Like you. And so we're sitting around with some new friends of ours over at the dinner table. Bottle of wine, we're talking. The first thing they said to me is because they had watched a bunch of my older films and my series, and they said, "So Frank, what are you doing next?" And I said, "I don't have a clue, honestly. I just don't know, because I'm not networking." And then the conversation started going, well, maybe you should do something about current, what's going on with COVID. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. I've been watching so much stuff on TV and on news about COVID and the workers and the seniors and the healthcare workers and the struggles. And it's just, there's enough out there.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see another COVID movie.
And all of a sudden somebody goes, what about the kids? And I go, the kids? I went to bed that night and I couldn't stop thinking about it, because we weren't thinking about kids, not early on. Then the next morning I get up and I go on my computer and I type in, how is the global pandemic impacting children around the world? And the first site comes up was the World Health Organization. And it said 1.6 billion children will not eat today because of COVID, because they are no longer being fed at schools, because they're not going. They will not have that lunch. Man, I'll tell you, that just went right straight to my heart. I was like, okay, somebody's got to talk about the kids then. And that's me. And that's when I took off. That night, I sat down. I spent about a month in my head figuring out, how do you do this globally? You're in Colorado, in a lockdown position. You don't know anybody here. So what I did was I sat down and I spent 2 weeks and I drafted up a conceptual idea and a framework. If I could get filmmakers around the world to listen to my conceptual idea and not take away from their creativity, but kind of direct from a distance, set camera settings, set the questions, give them some ideas and thoughts about what I'm looking for as far as less is more, no distractions in the background, very young kids, and they cannot know the questions ahead of time. I want it raw, I want it real, and I want it genuine. Well, the first week I got 10 countries that jumped out at me and said, I love this idea. How can I help? And before I knew it, I was off and running.
That's amazing. That's such a great story. And that's a very unique concept, a very unique way of going about the process of filmmaking. It's almost like filmmaker generated content to then come into that, because, look, filmmakers know that filmmaking in general is a collaborative art form. But when you're in lockdown, I appreciate you kind of being vulnerable and forthright about that. Is what do? You can't go anywhere. You can't do much of anything. With everything being shut down so quickly, you kind of started to carve your own path in that story. What was, would you say, there's always a big roadblock. Something happens where, whether it's on set, whether it's in pre-production or in post, where it's almost like the whole world is coming down on you. What was that moment or that day on this production?
I had a few of those. I was pretty fortunate. What I found was the hardest part for me was I was so used to making films where I had a cast, a crew, and a script. So I knew pretty much what was expected of everybody, including myself. Here, I was really out on an island because I'll tell this real briefly. Here's a good example. The gentleman from Poland in the film, when I first submitted to him, he was a filmmaker with experience. Yeah, he sends me an email and he says, I like this, but I have an idea how I think it could work. And I didn't even have an idea how it could work because I didn't have any footage yet. Right. I have no control. All I do is say, I've got it out there for them and let's see what happens. Well, 2 weeks goes by and I told us at a Q&A just recently, and 2 weeks go by and I was still kind of working out the details. And I finally said to him, I emailed him back and I said, so I'm curious, what is your ideas? And he goes, I don't have a fucking clue. I'm sorry. and I didn't want to say to him, well, either do I, because I really didn't. I just knew that with documentary work, which is so different, and haven't done it before. What I found was you can have an idea, but when you're working with different people around the globe, different time zones, you don't know what their environment's like. You don't know what their situation's like. All you know is that if they're willing to do what I was asking them, I was asking them to participate and contribute. I told them, I'm funding this myself. I'm an indie filmmaker. I don't have a budget, but the story is important. Our children are important. And I said, it's a perspective that hasn't been heard or seen yet on the pandemic. And I think I got that message through to the ones that said, I'm on board. And I ran into a couple, like most people, I ran into a couple things. I remember one of the filmmakers in Finland, his daughter was just wonderful. She was 9 years old, Gwen, 8 years old. And he says, I'll try to get this film for you as best as I can. I got a busy life. My wife's really on me about this stuff because I'm not making any money now. We're locked down. He sends me the footage and I bring it up and he's asking his daughter questions, and directly behind her, his wife's on the phone and cooking. And there was so much distraction. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to use this? So I was honest. I just said, Gwen's perfect, but the setting is wrong. You got to do this differently, Howard. And he goes, you're right, I am. And he came back with just, her in a room, no distractions. And, I emphasized that, but I didn't know his situation. I had to. And then one person in the UK in the Guernseys, he interviews his son on the beach with 40-mile-an-hour winds. And I was like, I'm good at my craft, but I am not magic. I even had the best software to try to take that wind out of it, and I couldn't. But I promised everybody in that film, if I only use parts of what you send me, or if I use none of it, all of you will be credited for your time and for your, being so grateful and thoughtful to wanting to help do this project. So yeah, I learned a few things. I think what I've learned is coming on the second one now. I'm not as frightened, or I'm kind of ready for it.
Yeah, right. You've been through the ringer, right?
Yeah. And then the next one's a little more involved, a little more deep, because it's on global warming and climate change. So it's a little harder. There's a lot more involved, and because it's not just questions. It's it's telling a story, but not as an activist or a celebrity. Which is what I hear with most of the films about global climate change. It's it's either a celebrity or it's Greta Thunberg. Yeah. So
right. No.
So yeah, I learned a lot, and I think those are some of the things that you have to plan for. But, it's no different than even when I was a casting crew. There were times when, we were shooting a film where our lead guy was supposed to, I'm sorry if you're hearing that dog in the background.
That's okay.
One of our main characters doesn't show up to the shoot. And he was really important in the film. And I looked at Steve and I said, and we were shooting. It was a really creepy, spooky movie, and we were shooting at an abandoned 200-year-old home that hadn't probably been, hadn't anybody been in it for 20, 30 years. So it was creepy. But I said to Steve, "What are we going to do?" And he goes, "I don't know. What are we going to do?" And I said, "I know what we're going to do. We're going to start out the film by saying, 'Where's Jason?' We're all outside looking at this creepy big old house. He went in ahead of us and we killed him."
So about improvising on the spot.
We decided we'd go in and find him, and in the dark, and of course nobody would see really much of a body, and we'd say,
"Sure.
God," and that just added more creep to the whole story, actually. So
happy accidents.
Where we go, what are we going to do? Because he's written into the story, and but I guess what we'll do is we'll just kill him.
Amazing. Now, Frank, you keep mentioning this word, this very particular word that I think is the utmost, important aspect of this whole filmmaking game, and that is story, and story as it relates to documentary filmmaking is very different to something like narrative film. But at the same time, there are some very fundamental similarities with telling a story to a particular audience. How do you go about that now that you've had this experience as a documentary filmmaker? How do you go about that aspect of storytelling within your film?
Well, as far as this with documentary work, for me, it's going to be something new for me, because with my last documentary, with the pandemic, what I did was I gave 5 questions to all the filmmakers to ask the children. So there was no really story. It was more, I want this raw answer, what are you missing while you're in the pandemic? Questions that kids could answer, but they can answer honestly. With this documentary, just like you were saying, I am trying to do something that I've never done before. I want it to be, it's going to be a story. So I want to weave all these different countries together where the name of the film is a common thread. And the concept is, in my mind, is with the lead character, who is a Native American girl here in Colorado, who is going to be the lead character. I call her a character because there is script writing. I'm writing the scripts for just about all the countries, which is not easy. Because I gave them the opportunity, because I felt like, well, you know more about global warming and climate change in your country than I do. But if you're not sure how to make that into a story, I said, we'll make it into a story. What we're basically doing is we're just telling a story. We're telling a story. And so with this one, and I think I've kind of got probably off the track here a little bit, because it is a hard question for me. When I write a comedy, or when I write a drama, or when I write anything with a story in mind, it's a lot easier, because what I will do is I will do it different ways. I'm sure all filmmakers have their own approach, just like songwriters who write songs. Some will write the music first, then write the words. Some filmmakers will approach it with, what we've learned through our experience. You find a beginning, you get a middle, you get an end, and then you find that arc in the story, or the backstory. If you're creating any kind of characters, what are the backstories? Because people want to know that. That's where the art comes in. For me, a lot of times, and that's because I think analytical too, not just linear. I would sometimes write the stories from the ending before I start with the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
But what is the ending? If this guy looks like he's 40 years old, and the resistance is after him because he's been around for 150 years and he has powers, well, then how do you back that up now? What is the backstory to that? What are those powers, and how did he get them, and where did they come from, and who is alive? Maybe that is part of his, world, his life. So yeah, you kind of take approach, and again, like I say, we all approach things differently. I don't think there's what I find now in filmmaking. I've been around a little longer, and there's people that are younger than me, and a lot of people older than me. But what I find is filmmaking is sort of like extreme sports now. When you're watching the Olympics, there are some rules, but you're allowed to really just step outside of that box and go, hey, it might make you uncomfortable, but maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe I want you to get up after this film and just go, I don't know what the hell just happened. Because he's talking about it.
I appreciate you saying that. That's an interesting perspective. And certainly, I think filmmakers appreciate hearing that, because you're told, that filmmaking needs to be done a certain way, but it's totally okay once you know the fundamentals to start breaking all those rules. Now we have to start working towards wrapping up. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I think it's been a great little mastermind between the two of us here, Frank. Where can our filmmakers go to find out more about you, find out about your projects and what you're working on?
Well, probably most like most of us indie filmmakers. I mean, if they were to just Google Frank Fazzio filmmaker, I think there's only other one Fazzio that comes up, and he's an actor, and he's with a onesie, and I'm my AZZIO, so Frank. And then that really will then probably, if you Google it, that's what that's going to do, is just going to throw up all kind of stuff like interviews that I've done, podcasts, sci-fi.
IMDb, I'm sure.
Yeah, IMDb. I have to say, with the IMDb stuff, I kind of lost track of it for a while, because I was an actor for quite a while. But then when I started getting behind the camera and I started falling in love with directing and producing and writing, I that didn't be that all of a sudden was not important to me anymore. It was like, what are your credits, you know? And I don't want to dispel, because I know there's a lot of filmmakers that are out there listening going, hey dude, you know, I'm trying to make a living off of this and make money. And I get that. But for me, like I say, what comes first for me is making the film, being genuine about what I'm doing, treating people right, not being an asshole, no egos, just tell your stories, tell your films. Do them in a way that you would go, everybody that was on that film, not everybody, but most people will probably go, man, I was really proud to be part of that. I was really excited that I got to be part of that. And that's what I got from this last documentary. All these kids and these people from Global Filmmakers said, I had no idea that how you were going to pull this together, but I am so grateful and thankful to be part of it. And I said, well, you know, it's collaboration, it's honesty, it's working at something, it's it's honing your craft, but not getting ahead of yourself and saying, you know, I'm better than this. I learn from people every day about things, and I want to keep doing that, and especially with filmmaking. You know, I love when people shadow me. I know we got to end. I did a Batman film where I was the lead DP on it, and there was a guy who was shadowing me. He had just started filmmaking. He was only in his 20s, and he was watching me, and he was really good. I could tell. All of a sudden, we were in our second, third shoot, and I said, I want you to shoot this scene. You can do it. He looks at me and goes, you want me to take your camera and shoot it? I go, you can do it. You can do it. And he did it. And it really just catapulted him, because now he's on to probably 3 or 4 Batman films that he's pretty much directing, producing, and doing himself. And I'm just amazed. And he still tells that story. He says, I'll never forget that. Frank just said,
Gave him a chance.
Give him a chance. Yeah. Because,
beautiful.
You know, what's the worst can happen? It doesn't work out. And then you just say, well, too bad, cast and crew. We're here for another hour. Okay, let's reshoot that scene. But to give that opportunity, oh my God.
Nothing like it. All right, Frank, final question for you. This one's a doozy. What is your deserted island movie? So if you could only watch one film for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh,
this always seems to give people this anxiety-inducing feeling.
Me, because I tell you, I come for the underdog ones. So, you know, I mean, I'm not, you know, some people would probably say, you know, I never get tired of watching, you know, Star Wars or whatever. For me, it would be something like a David Lynch or a film, or Jem Jarmusch or Spike Lee, one of those films, you know, that just early on, they seem to know how to capture some raw feelings and real stories. And, you know,
what is that film for you?
Well, I guess Spike Lee would be probably Do the Right Thing. That was one of them. Jem Jarmusch, if you have never heard of him, Down by Law, that is one of the most underrated black and white films. And it was just so beautifully done, and David Lynch, of course. But yeah, I mean, that is a hard one, because, you know, I go all over the spectrum. I love film. So to me, you know, I could watch Princess Bride and watch, you know, Ron Howard all the way over to, Tarantino. I mean, but yeah, those are kind of the ones that you don't see on the top list all the time. I like those.
There you go.
You know? So that's great. that would be my take. And that's just me, only, you know, speaking for myself.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. Thanks for your time. This has been very enlightening. Much success to you. I appreciate you coming on Filmmaker Secrets podcast.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, George. Thank you for having me on. And thank you. And I look forward to your success continuing this. You're doing a great thing.
If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.